I knew something was different about Saturday the moment Jake pulled into the golf course parking lot with someone sitting in his passenger seat. Our usual routine was simple. He arrived 5 minutes late, complained about traffic, and blamed at least 3 bad shots on not having enough coffee. That morning, the passenger door opened first and Emma Hayes stepped out wearing a white golf skirt, a pale blue sleeveless polo, sunglasses pushed into her hair, and the expression of somebody who already knew she had disrupted the plan. I had known Emma for years, mostly through birthdays, barbecues, and the occasional dinner with Jake's family. Apparently, I had not seen her recently enough. She caught me looking, smiled, and lifted a borrowed golf bag from the back seat. "Morning, Connor." Jake came around the car carrying his clubs. "Emma wants to learn properly. You're helping." Emma looked directly at me, one eyebrow lifting. "You're teaching me, right?" "My name is Connor Mitchell. I was 31. Jake Hayes had been my best friend since college, and until that morning I had been very successful at keeping his younger sister in a category that required almost no thought. Emma was 27 now, which made the word younger feel increasingly useless, but old habits were convenient. She was Jake's sister. I was Jake's friend. We occasionally teased each other at group dinners. She occasionally accused me of being too serious, and nothing complicated happened. At least that was how I had arranged the situation in my head. Then she stood beside the practice range in Scottsdale with a club resting against one shoulder and waited for my answer, like Jake had stopped existing. "I can give you a few pointers," I said. Emma smiled. "A few?" I was promised expertise. Jake laughed as he started toward the range. "I promised nothing," I said. "Connor is annoyingly patient." Emma fell into step beside me. Perfect. I planned to test that. She was not nearly as bad as she claimed. Her grip needed work and she stood too upright. But she had enough coordination that after 10 minutes, she was getting the ball airborne consistently. I showed her how to shift her weight instead of trying to lift the ball with her hands, then step back while she tried again. The next shot carried straight toward the middle of the range. Emma turned immediately toward me instead of watching where it landed. "Better?" "Much." That sounded suspiciously close to praise. "Don't get dependent on it." She narrowed her eyes and reset. 2 swings later, she asked me to check her grip again. I did. Then she asked about her shoulders, then her feet. By the 4th correction, I was reasonably sure at least half her questions could have been answered by repeating what I had already told her. I stood beside her and pointed toward the target. "You know what you're doing now." Emma looked up at me through her sunglasses. Maybe I like quality control. That was the problem. She said things lightly enough that I could always choose the innocent interpretation, but she watched me afterward, as if she wanted to know which interpretation I had chosen. I adjusted the position of her lead hand on the club without making more contact than necessary. "Your grip is fine." That sounded disappointed. "You're a difficult student, and yet you keep standing over here." I looked at her. Emma's mouth curved, and then she turned back to the ball before I could decide whether answering would be smart. Her next shot was clean enough to make Jake whistle from 3 stations away. Emma raised both arms in victory. "That one was me, naturally. The bad ones are coaching errors. I see how this relationship works." She lowered the club and gave me a quick glance. "Relationship is a strong word this early, Connor." I laughed despite myself, which seemed to satisfy her far more than it should have. When we headed toward the first tee, Jake tossed me a cart key while he went to grab scorecards. Before anyone discussed pairings, Emma walked straight past her brother's cart and secured her bag to mine. "Subtle," I said. She climbed into the passenger seat. "You're the instructor. I require access. For all 18 holes? Do you normally abandon students halfway through class?" Jake came back, looked at the arrangement, and shrugged. "Good, she can bother you." Emma smiled sweetly at him. "Thanks, Jake." He drove off alone, completely unaware that his sister had just made my Saturday considerably more complicated. Golf gives you a lot of time with somebody, more than people realize. A round is not 4 hours of swinging clubs. It is cart rides, waiting on tee boxes, walking across greens, searching for balls, watching other people hit, and conversations that stop and restart without needing a reason. By the 4th hole, Emma and I had developed a system. She called every bad shot a student complaint. I gave her 1 mulligan and refused the next 2 on ethical grounds. She accused me of choosing clubs based on psychological intimidation. I told her the 7-iron had no personal feelings about her. When I reminded her to slow down before an approach shot, she said, "You say that like you've been studying me." I answered before caution could interfere. "Hard not to when you keep asking me to watch." Emma went quiet for exactly 1 second, then smiled and hit the best shot she had made all morning. The ball landed just short of the green. Emma turned toward me with both hands still around the club, eyes bright. "Did you see that?" I was instructed to watch. She came toward me laughing and held up her hand. I gave her a high five, but instead of immediately pulling away, her fingers curled briefly around mine. It lasted no more than a second, maybe less. Jake was 30 yards away arguing with his own ball in a bunker and saw nothing. Emma let go and headed back to the cart like nothing had happened. I followed, suddenly much more aware of my hand than any adult man should be. By the 9th hole, Emma had stopped asking Jake anything about golf. Club selection, putting line, whether she should play conservatively or go for the green. Every question came to me. I told myself that made sense because I was supposedly teaching her. What made less sense was how much I liked being the person she looked for first. At the turn, Jake disappeared into the clubhouse to buy drinks and something containing enough bacon to shorten his life expectancy. Emma stayed outside with me beside the carts, leaning against the seat while I checked the scorecard. "So," she said, "do you ever teach outside Saturdays?" I looked up. "Are you asking whether I offer professional services?" "I'm asking whether you're free Thursday evening." There was no brother standing beside her now and no golf question hiding inside the sentence. Emma tilted her head. "Driving range, 6:30. Unless your patience is only available on weekends." I could have asked if Jake was coming. The thought crossed my mind and disappeared almost immediately. 6:30 works. Emma's smile became noticeably less teasing. Good. Then Jake came back balancing 3 drinks, and she straightened as if nothing important had happened. We finished the round, but my mind kept returning to Thursday. What had started as helping my best friend's sister for a few holes now had a second appointment, and this one did not include my best friend at all. Thursday at 6:25. I pulled into the driving range and found Emma already there. She had claimed a station near the far end, where the evening sun hit the range at an angle, and most of the afterwork crowd had not bothered to walk. Her hair was tied back, a glove tucked into the waistband of her golf skirt, and a small notebook sat open beside the bucket of balls. I stopped behind her long enough to watch one swing before she noticed me. The shot started slightly right, corrected, and landed farther downrange than anything she had hit on Saturday. Emma turned with a look that was much too satisfied. "You're late." I checked my phone. "I'm 5 minutes early." A dedicated instructor would have been 10. I nodded toward the notebook. A dedicated student apparently brought homework. She covered it with one hand. "Confidential research." "That sounds like evidence you don't need me anymore." Emma smiled. "Don't get ahead of yourself." The notes turned out to be reminders from Saturday. Slow the backswing. Let the club do the work. Stop trying to help the ball into the air. She had even written down which club distances felt comfortable, which was more organized than half the golfers I knew who had been playing for years. I watched her hit 3 more balls before offering any correction. The first was good. The second was better. The third landed almost exactly where she aimed. Emma lowered the club and looked at me. "Well, I'm concerned." "About?" "My job security," she laughed. I knew praise was possible. I just had to remove witnesses. The truth was, her improvement created a problem I had not expected. On Saturday, I could justify standing close because she genuinely needed help. Thursday, Emma was already doing most of it correctly, which meant every time she asked me to check something, both of us knew the lesson was becoming less necessary. She hit another ball, then frowned. "Something feels off." "Your tempo. Show me." I demonstrated the motion beside her, but Emma shook her head. "No." Mine. I looked at her. "You want me to move you? I want you to show me where I'm wrong." Her voice was perfectly innocent. Her eyes were not. I stepped behind and slightly to her side, careful to leave room between us. Then guided her lead hand lower on the grip. "Here," she adjusted. "And your right shoulder is opening early." I touched 2 fingers lightly near the back of her shoulder to indicate the position. Emma turned her head just enough to look at me. "You're very cautious. You're holding a metal club." "That's your excuse?" "One of several." Her smile widened. "What are the others?" I should have stepped away and told her to swing. Instead I said, "Your brother has known me 14 years and probably knows where I live." Emma blinked, then laughed so hard she had to lower the club. "Connor, I know where you live too." That is somehow less reassuring. She reset her stance, still smiling. "For somebody so patient, you spend a lot of effort avoiding simple answers. Ask a simple question." Emma looked straight ahead. "Are you attracted to me?" That was simple enough to be dangerous. I waited until she glanced back. "Yes." Her smile disappeared for half a second, replaced by genuine surprise. Then it returned slower. "Okay, you asked. I know." She looked down at the ball again. I just expected another legal argument. Golf course, different jurisdiction. Her next swing was terrible. The ball skidded along the ground about 40 yards before surrendering. I folded my arms. "Interesting." Emma pointed the club at me. "That was sabotage. I answered your question." "Exactly. Would you prefer I lie?" "I'd prefer you wait until after impact next time." I laughed, and whatever tension had settled between us became lighter without disappearing. More importantly, something had changed. Emma had finally asked directly, and I had answered directly. Neither of us had been struck by lightning. Jake had not appeared from behind a ball machine. The world continued normally, except now the attraction was no longer something only I had to interpret. We turned the last 20 balls into a target game. Pick a flag, closest shot wins. Emma beat me twice and celebrated both victories with an amount of arrogance usually reserved for major championships. On the third round, she pointed toward a narrow green near the back. Winner chooses what happens next. That sounds suspicious. Scared? Of your current accuracy? Not particularly. She hit first and landed short but straight. Mine carried farther and missed left. Emma held up both hands. Victory. You lost by distance. We were measuring proximity. You invented that after I hit. Good competitors understand adaptive rules. I put my club back in the bag. Fine. What did you win? She picked up her water bottle. A drink. The clubhouse patio was quiet by then. We sat near the edge overlooking the last few holes while the sky turned orange behind the palms. Golf disappeared from the conversation surprisingly fast. Emma told me moving back to Scottsdale had felt stranger than she expected because everyone kept reacting to the version of her they remembered. Family friends still asked whether she had decided what she wanted to do with her life, even though she had been working in sports marketing for 5 years. Jake still tried to recommend mechanics, doctors, restaurants, and occasionally men as if she had returned from college last month. He means well, she said. That almost makes it more annoying. I took a sip of my beer. You think I do that too? Emma considered the question instead of answering automatically. Sometimes. How? You're not controlling, you just become extremely responsible around me. She smiled faintly. Like if you relax too much, some invisible best friend law gets violated. I looked across the course. There are complications? Sure, her tone stayed easy. But I'm not asking you to ignore them. She paused. I just don't want them deciding everything before I get a vote. That stayed with me. Not because she was telling me to make a move, but because she was pointing out something I had been quietly doing since Saturday. I had treated Jake like the bridge between us, even after Emma started building her own. She had asked me to teach her. She had chosen my cart. She had booked Thursday. Now she had asked whether I was attracted to her and taken the answer without turning it into drama. Whatever happened next was not going to be something Jake accidentally caused. When we finally walked back toward the parking lot, Emma stopped beside her car. I'm practicing Saturday morning. With Jake, the question came out automatically. Emma raised one eyebrow. I immediately understood the mistake. Forget I asked. Good recovery. She opened her door, then looked back at me. 8:30, same range, quality control. I'll be there. Her expression warmed. Good. I was halfway home when my phone buzzed at a red light. Emma had sent a photo of the scorecard from our target game with her 2 wins circled aggressively in red. Underneath it she had written, Saturday lesson comes with a condition. I replied, that sounds threatening. 3 dots appeared, then her answer. This time, I get to teach you something. For the first time since she had walked onto the course with Jake, I was not wondering whether Emma wanted my attention. I was wondering what she planned to do with it once I stopped pretending the lesson only went one way. Saturday morning, Emma arrived carrying 2 putters and an expression that suggested she had been waiting all week to become unbearable. I was warming up near the practice green when she dropped 1 putter beside my bag and said, Today you're the student. I looked at the club, then at her. You've played golf for 2 weeks. Full golf, yes. Putting is different. She walked toward the green and tossed a ball down. My dad used to take us to miniature golf constantly when we were kids. Jake treated it like warfare. I learned to read slopes because beating him was the only way to get 5 minutes of silence. I followed her, skeptical enough to be entertained. Emma pointed at a 12-foot putt breaking left to right. Make it. I studied the line, took my stance, and missed on the low side by 4 inches. Emma nodded, like a doctor confirming a diagnosis. Exactly what I thought. You've seen 1 putt, and already I'm concerned. Her own ball rolled directly into the center of the cup. She did not celebrate loudly. She just looked at me and held out her hand for the putter with a small, satisfied smile. You overthink. I read the green. You held a committee meeting with it. She dropped another ball beside mine and crouched to study the slope. Your line was fine. Your speed was nervous. My speed does not have emotions. Everything about you has a spreadsheet hidden somewhere. I laughed and let her move me to another position. For the next half hour, Emma did exactly what I had done to her the week before, except with much less respect for my dignity. She made me try shorter strokes, changed where I focused before contact, and told me to stop staring at the hole like it owed me an explanation. The worst part was that she was good at it. On the 5th attempt from the same spot, I started adjusting my feet again. Emma stepped beside me and tapped the toe of my shoe lightly with hers. Stop fixing things. My alignment is off. Your alignment is fine. She pointed toward the cup. Trust the shot. I looked at her. The phrase sounded familiar because I had said almost the same thing to her Thursday. Emma knew it too. Her mouth twitched. Deeply good. Now hit it. I did, mostly because I wanted to prove she was wrong. The ball followed the line she had chosen and dropped. Emma lifted both hands in victory. Look at that. My student has potential. I handed her the putter. Your teaching style lacks humility. My student responds poorly to kindness. Then she bumped her shoulder into mine and added, "You're more fun when you're not in charge." That sentence stayed with me longer than it should have. The dynamic between us had changed without either of us announcing it. Emma was not standing beside me waiting for approval anymore. She was correcting me, beating me, making choices, and enjoying the fact that I listened. I realized I liked it. More than that, I liked the version of us that appeared when neither person had a designated role. Over the following week, golf became less like a lesson and more like the excuse that got us into the same place. We practiced twice, got tacos afterward once, and spent another evening at a sports bar arguing about whether professional golfers should be allowed to complain about crowd noise. Emma started texting me things that had nothing to do with golf. A terrible billboard. A screenshot from a dating app profile her friend had sent her. A photo of Jake asleep on his own couch with the caption, "Your best friend is thriving." I answered every time, and eventually stopped pretending I needed a golf-related reason to start conversations myself. The following Tuesday, I sent her a picture of an absurdly expensive putter displayed in a shop window and wrote, "Thinking of buying this so I can ignore your advice with better equipment." She replied, "Buy it. I'd love to beat you with financial consequences." That same night, Jake texted our group chat about a charity scramble happening the following weekend. He had played it with me the previous 2 years, and his message assumed we would do the same again. "Connor, I registered us. Emma, you can join if you find somebody willing to tolerate 18 holes of coaching complaints." Before I could answer, Emma replied, "Already have a partner." Jake sent, "Who?" Emma wrote, "Connor." I stared at the screen, smiling despite myself. Jake immediately called me. "Did my sister steal my scramble partner?" he asked without saying hello. "Apparently. You're allowing this?" I wasn't consulted. Emma's name appeared in a second incoming message while he was talking. "Don't you dare give him back." I laughed. Jake heard it. "She's sitting right there texting you, isn't she possibly? Unbelievable. I introduce you two to golf, and this is the thanks I get." That part was historically inaccurate in several ways, but Jake sounded amused rather than suspicious. He told me he would find another partner, and hung up after promising to destroy us. What mattered was that I could have corrected the situation. I could have told Emma Jake and I traditionally played together or suggested the three of us rearrange teams. Instead, I texted her. "Looks like we're partners," she replied. "Try to keep up." It was a small decision, but I knew exactly what I had chosen. Emma had selected me in front of Jake, and I had accepted without hiding behind him. We practiced for the scramble that Saturday afternoon. By then, Emma's swing was consistent enough that I only stepped in when she asked, and her putting had become the stronger half of our team. On the final practice hole, I hit a clean approach to about 15 feet. Emma walked onto the green, studied the line, and pointed 2 inches outside the left edge. "There, that's aggressive. Trust the shot." "You're enjoying saying that. More than you know." I hit it exactly where she told me. The ball broke late and dropped. Emma shouted, ran 2 steps toward me, and wrapped both arms around my shoulders before either of us thought about it. I caught her around the waist automatically. For a second, the golf course disappeared into the simple fact that Emma was pressed against me, and neither of us was laughing anymore. She leaned back just enough to look at my face, but did not release me. I did not release her either. Her eyes dropped briefly toward my mouth, then returned to mine. I could have kissed her. I knew she would not have been shocked if I did. Instead, a cart rolled past on the neighboring path, and the moment loosened. Emma stepped back slowly, smoothing one hand over the front of her polo like she suddenly needed something to do. "Good putt," she said. "Good read, obviously." We finished the hole with the tension still sitting comfortably between us. At the parking lot, Emma loaded her clubs into her car, then rested both hands on the open trunk. "You know the charity scramble is probably the end of your teaching career. Excuse me, I'm getting good. Debatable." She smiled. "After next weekend, I don't think I'll need lessons anymore." The words were playful, but the question underneath them was not. Golf lessons had been the reason we kept putting time on the calendar. Emma was telling me that reason had an expiration date. She closed the trunk and looked at me. "So you might want to start thinking about what you're going to do when your student graduates." Then she got into her car and left me standing beside mine with the uncomfortable realization that I had spent weeks enjoying every reason Emma gave me to see her. Very soon, I was going to need a reason of my own. The charity scramble started the following Saturday with Emma standing beside our cart in a white visor, navy golf skirt, and enough confidence to suggest she had completely forgotten that 3 weeks earlier she had been asking me what half the clubs in her bag were for. Jake had found another partner and spent most of warm-ups telling anyone who would listen that his sister had stolen me. Emma ignored him until he finally said, "I created this monster." She looked at me. "Do you remember him creating anything, mostly problems?" Jake pointed at both of us. "This is exactly what I'm talking about." Emma smiled and climbed into the passenger seat of our cart. "Come on, partner. We have reputations to ruin." I followed her, and for the first time since she had joined that original Saturday round, I did not feel like the guy assigned to help my best friend's sister. I felt like half of a team she had deliberately chosen. The format suited us. My drives were more consistent. Emma's short game had become genuinely useful, and she could read greens better than several people in our group who had played for years. By the 6th hole, I stopped automatically checking whether she wanted advice. If she asked, I gave it. If she did not, I trusted her. Emma noticed the difference. After hitting a clean iron shot onto the green, she came back to the cart and said, "You didn't correct anything. There was nothing to correct. I need that in writing. Don't become emotional." She gave me a satisfied look. My instructor is finally learning. That word sounded different now. Instructor. It had been useful when we needed a reason to spend time together, but the person beside me no longer needed somebody hovering over every swing. Emma knew it too. Late in the round, we reached a par 4 where our approach left us just outside 15 feet for birdie. The putt broke hard near the cup, and I crouched to read it from behind the ball. Emma walked around the other side and studied it for a few seconds. Cup and a half left. That much? Trust the shot. I looked up at her. You have become dangerously attached to that sentence, because you keep needing it. I stood and handed her the putter. Then prove it, Emma blinked. You want me to take it? Your read. Your putt. The teasing disappeared from her expression, replaced by focus. She stepped over the ball, made one smooth stroke, and watched it roll across the slope. For a second it looked too high. Then it turned exactly where she predicted and dropped into the center. Emma spun toward me with both fists raised. I laughed and caught her when she came straight into my arms. This time neither of us had the excuse of surprise. Her hands landed around my shoulders, mine settled naturally at her waist, and she looked up at me with a smile that stayed there a second longer than celebration required. Still think I need lessons? She asked. Pudding lessons? Absolutely not. Good answer. She stepped away only when the group behind us started approaching the tee. Nothing dramatic happened, but I noticed the absence of hesitation. We had become comfortable enough to touch without immediately treating it like an emergency, which made pretending we were only working on golf increasingly ridiculous. We finished 2 shots under our expected score and nowhere near winning the tournament, which Emma blamed entirely on my putting. Back at the clubhouse, Jake joined us with drinks and clapped me on the shoulder. Not bad. I have to admit, you turned her into an actual golfer. Emma rolled her eyes. I'm standing right here. Jake grinned. You know what I mean, I did. The sentence bothered me anyway. It made the last few weeks sound like something I had done to Emma rather than something we had built together. She had improved because she practiced. She had taught me things. She had forced me to loosen my routines, trust her decisions, and stop acting like every attraction needed to be managed into harmlessness before I could enjoy it. Emma disappeared for a few minutes to help Sophia with something near the registration table. When she came back, she held the small swing trainer I had lent her after our second practice session. She placed it in my hand. Graduation gift. I looked down at it. You're returning my own property as a gift? Sentiment matters. This is devastating. She smiled, but there was intention underneath it. I think I'm officially done with lessons. I tried the easy response. There are advanced courses, Connor. She said my name gently and I stopped. Emma looked out toward the course for a second before meeting my eyes again. I can practice golf without you now. The words were simple, but I understood exactly why she had chosen them. She continued before I could answer. I kept booking lessons because I wanted to see you. At first I wasn't sure whether you knew that. Then I was pretty sure you knew and were enjoying pretending not to. I laughed quietly. That sounds fair. I liked it, all of it. Her fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the table. But I don't want to keep inventing golf problems just so you'll ask when I'm free. There was no accusation in her voice. That made the truth harder to avoid, so I'm retiring as your student. I could have asked her to dinner right there. But something about doing it immediately would have felt like reacting to the possibility of losing her attention rather than making the choice because I had finally decided what I wanted. Emma seemed to understand that. She did not stand there waiting for a grand response. She touched my forearm once and said, I'm going to help Sophia before she steals all the raffle prizes. Then she walked away. For the first time since our original round with Jake, there was no next practice session waiting on the calendar, no Thursday range, no Saturday lesson, no charity scramble we had to prepare for. The structure Emma had created was finished, and I discovered very quickly that I hated the empty space it left behind. Not because I needed another golf session, but because I wanted another morning with her, another argument in a cart, another drink after we finished playing, another chance to watch her become serious right before a difficult shot. I wanted Emma without the lesson attached. I left the clubhouse before she did and drove 15 minutes to a course on the edge of Scottsdale, where I knew they ran a late 9-hole tee time just before sunset. There was one opening the following evening. I booked it for 2 before I could turn the decision into a week of analysis. Then I texted Emma the confirmation. For once I did not mention coaching, pudding practice, or anything she supposedly needed from me. I wrote only, "No lesson tomorrow, just you and me." Her reply took less than a minute. "That sounds suspiciously like a date." I stared at the screen, smiled, and typed the answer I should probably have been willing to give weeks earlier. Good. Emma was already waiting beside the first tee when I arrived Sunday evening, leaning against her golf bag with the sunset behind her and the kind of smile that made it obvious she had been thinking about my message all day. "No lesson?" she asked as I walked over. "No lesson? No Jake? No Jake?" She tilted her head. "And you still booked this for 2? I took my driver from the bag. I believe that was the idea. Emma folded her arms, enjoying herself. "Connor, a private sunset tea time with a woman you've been flirting with for 3 weeks sounds suspiciously like a date." I looked directly at her. "It is, for once." Emma Hayes had absolutely nothing ready. Her eyebrows rose, color touched her cheeks, and then she smiled. "Good, I just wanted to hear you say it." That changed the round before either of us hit a ball. I did not hover over her stance or automatically ask what club she was using. Emma did not invent questions she already knew the answers to. We simply played golf, and somehow removing the instructor-student excuse made everything easier. She hit her first drive into the fairway and looked at me expectantly. "Well?" I shrugged. "Not my student anymore. You can still compliment me." "Fine, acceptable." She stared at me. "Dating you is going to require retraining." That sounds suspiciously like a lesson. Emma laughed and drove the cart away before I could finish putting my clubs in the back. The best part was that we were still exactly ourselves. Emma mocked my pre-shot routine. I accused her of treating every risky shot like a personal dare. On the 4th hole, she tried to carry a bunker she had no business challenging and somehow made it. She raised both arms as if she had won a major championship, then pointed at me. "Say it. No Connor. Fine. Great shot. With feeling. You're abusing the terms of this date." She grinned. "So you admit it's a date again?" I had spent weeks finding technical language to avoid that word, and now saying it felt almost embarrassingly easy. "Yes, Emma, it's a date." On the 6th green, I faced a 12-foot putt with a nasty break and made the mistake of studying it from 3 different angles. Emma stood beside the flag with her hands on her hips. "You're doing the committee meeting thing again. This putt deserves due process." She walked over, crouched behind my ball, and pointed toward the left edge. "Half a cup outside. Medium pace." I looked at the line. "Too aggressive. Trust the shot." That phrase had started with me correcting her swing. Then she had stolen it, and somehow made it ours. I took my stance, followed her red, and watched the ball curl toward the hole before dropping cleanly into the cup. Emma smiled like she had expected nothing else. I handed her the putter. "Fine. Maybe you're useful. I'm writing that down." We reached the 7th tee with the sun dropping lower behind the mountains, and there was finally enough quiet for the conversation I had been avoiding. I set my club against the cart and looked at Emma. "Jake wasn't really the problem." She glanced at me. "I know. You do. Connor, my brother, has been happily wandering around these golf courses while I steal his cart partner every weekend. I figured out a while ago that he wasn't physically restraining you." I laughed. "Fair." I told her the truth anyway. Jake had given me a convenient reason to be cautious, but the bigger issue was that I wanted so much proof that she genuinely liked me that I kept waiting until there was almost no risk left. "Every lesson made it clearer," I said. "Every text made it clearer. You choosing me for the scramble made it extremely clear." And somehow I still wanted one more piece of evidence. Emma leaned back against the cart. I wasn't exactly fearless. She rubbed her thumb along the edge of her glove. "Asking you to teach me was safe. If you weren't interested, I could say I actually needed golf help. The teasing was safe too. If you didn't flirt back, I could pretend I was messing with you." She smiled faintly. Apparently we both built very sophisticated escape routes. Mine had spreadsheets, obviously. I stepped closer. "I don't want one anymore." The joke disappeared from her expression. "Neither do I." I did not answer that with a speech. I pulled out my phone, opened the course booking page, and asked, "Next Saturday?" Emma blinked. "We haven't finished this round." "I know. And you're already asking me again?" That's generally how wanting to see someone works. Her smile spread slowly. "Morning or afternoon?" "Morning, fine. And after?" This time I understood the question immediately. "Dinner." Emma shook her head. "Golf at 9 and dinner at 7? You said you wanted quality time. That is an aggressively long date. You can file a complaint." She stepped closer until the front of her shoulder touched mine. "I think I'll survive." We finished the last 2 holes with the kind of stupid happiness that makes scorecards irrelevant. Emma won the final hole because my approach shot caught the edge of a bunker, and she spent the entire cart ride back claiming the victory proved she had officially surpassed her former instructor. Near the bag drop, we stopped beside the cart while the last sunlight stretched across the course. She handed me a club I had left behind and said, "So what happens now, teacher?" "Retired." "Right. What happens now, Connor? I put the club away, turned back toward her, and kissed her. There was no surprise in it. That was what I liked most. Emma had already chosen me repeatedly, and I had finally chosen her without requiring another reason. Her hands rested lightly against my chest, and mine settled at her waist as she moved closer. When we separated, she stayed there, smiling up at me. That took an unreasonable amount of golf. You were a difficult student. I was an excellent student. You manipulated the instructor, and yet here you are. I kissed her again because she had unfortunately made a strong argument, I told Jake 2 days later. He stared at me across a restaurant table for several seconds, then asked, "You and Emma?" I said yes. He asked whether this had started when she joined our golf round. I said more or less. Jake rubbed a hand over his face and muttered, "I literally handed you the cart key." Then he looked at me more seriously. "You treating this like a real thing?" I told him I was. That was enough. He warned me that he reserved the right to become unbearable if I hurt her, and I reminded him he had already been unbearable for 14 years. We finished lunch normally. Over the next few months, golf stayed part of our relationship without remaining the reason for it. Emma and I went to dinner, concerts, grocery stores, terrible trivia nights, and eventually, enough weekend rounds that Jake complained he had permanently lost his regular partner. Emma became good enough that I stopped keeping track of who had taught whom what. One Saturday, I stood over a difficult putt and started reconsidering my line for the 3rd time. Emma walked beside me, studied the green, and smirked. I handed her the putter. "You're teaching me, right?" She recognized the line immediately and laughed. "Only if you're finally ready to listen." Apparently I am. I used to think Emma needed golf lessons. Looking back, the bigger adjustment was mine. I had to stop letting an old label make a decision that belonged to 2 adults standing right in front of each other.
And when you look back at how Connor and Emma got there, the golf lessons were never really the point. Emma entered that first Saturday as Jake's younger sister, someone Connor had known for years but kept safely filed under a label that asked nothing of him. Then she chose his cart, kept directing every question toward him, asked for another practice session without Jake, and finally removed the last bit of ambiguity by asking whether Connor was attracted to her. Connor answered yes, but even that did not immediately change his habit of waiting for Emma to create the next opening. What changed the rhythm was that Emma refused to stay in the role of student. She practiced seriously, started teaching Connor how to read putts, booked more time with him because she wanted to see him, and chose him publicly as her partner for the charity scramble. By then, golf had become a shared language rather than an excuse for Connor to supervise her. The more capable Emma became, the harder it was for him to pretend she still needed lessons, and the harder it was to avoid the real question of whether he would keep choosing her once the practical reason to meet disappeared. Emma answered that question for him in the clearest way she could. After the scramble, she returned his swing trainer, told him she could practice without him, and admitted that she had been booking lessons because she wanted his company. Then she stepped away instead of immediately giving him another plan. That empty space finally forced Connor to act without being prompted. He booked a sunset tea time for 2 and sent her a message that stripped away every excuse. No lesson, just the 2 of them. Emma called it what it was, a date, and Connor finally stopped hiding behind technical language. From there, the relationship became simpler because the choice was mutual and visible. Connor told Emma directly that Jake had never really been the obstacle. His bigger problem was wanting so much proof that Emma liked him that he kept delaying until almost all risk had disappeared. Emma admitted she had built her own escape routes too, using lessons and teasing because they gave her plausible deniability. Once both of them stopped needing those exits, Connor asked for another date before the first one was even over, kissed her without needing golf to justify the moment, and later told Jake the truth without asking permission. The relationship kept going because golf stopped being the reason they spent time together and became just one part of a much bigger connection. The interesting thing here is how easily caution can start looking virtuous even after it has stopped serving anyone. Connor's concern about Jake was understandable at first because a friendship and a family connection were involved, but the story keeps showing that Jake was not actually blocking anything. Emma was an adult, she made her interest clear repeatedly, and Jake himself treated the golf pairing as normal long before Connor was ready to admit what it meant. What made Emma's approach effective was that she eventually stopped rewarding Connor's indecision. She did not threaten him or demand a declaration. She simply retired the student role and removed the structure that had allowed him to keep receiving her attention without making a choice of his own. That is a very different kind of boundary. She was not punishing him. She was making sure the relationship could only continue if he participated in creating it. Connor's strongest moment then was not the kiss or even telling Jake. It was booking that next tea time before Emma gave him another reason. For the first time, he acted because he wanted to see her, not because she needed help, challenged him, or arranged the opportunity. That shift from responding to choosing is what made the romance feel earned. By the end, the joke about who was teaching whom works because the answer is both of them. Emma learned golf, but Connor learned how to stop waiting for certainty before taking responsibility for what he wanted. Connor had plenty of evidence long before he booked that sunset round, so I'm curious where your cutoff would have been. Would Emma choosing your cart, asking for private practice, and admitting she booked lessons just to see you have been enough, or would you still have waited? Drop your take below, and if this kind of slow burn, back and forth romance is your thing, you can like the video and subscribe for the next story.